welcome to Bats Coming Clean. I'm Peggy the Enforcer.
I'm Mike, and we are joined by Al Byrne.
And that's me. I'm Al Byrne.
Al is a retired U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Al. It's so good to see you.
I'm always glad to talk with veterans, and I do appreciate the chance to do that. I know we're going to have a pretty good conversation. And you can see in the background, folks, that behind Peggy is a dog. And underneath me are two dogs. So anything could happen with the barking. Just, we'll do our best.
Yeah, that's the little one over by her right now.
The little one, yeah. Okay.
Yes. So, Al, I've read your book, and I absolutely love it, For Country and Cannabis. And honestly, there's a lot that you have seen. So I want to ask you, what would you like to start off with talking about that you have? What have you seen that you'd like to talk about?
Well, the book, of course, is sort of why I'm here, I guess, to just tell people that I wrote it for a couple of different reasons, if I can list them correctly. The first one would be to remember people in the medical cannabis effort that would never be remembered. People that did yeoman work, people that put themselves at risk to some degree, that nobody knows their names except me. But I wanted somebody else to know their names and what they did. So that's one of the motivations. And that thought was influenced by people who do know me and do know my background, and said, Al, if you don't write this thing, nobody else can. And as I mentioned on my book cover, the reason nobody else can is because most of these people are dead. We're old. I'm 80 years old. And a lot of this stuff occurred 30 years ago. And we've all, passed through that time. So that was a big reason. The other reason, I think, is that what I try to do, Peggy knows this, and Mike from other conversations we've had, I'm a storyteller. That's how I try to get information across. So I wrote this book as a series of stories. Yeah, I'm sort of the principal actor, but this thing isn't really a memoir. I'm not telling you about my baby years, and I'm not telling you about my girlfriends, all of that stuff. I'm just not. What I'm telling you is stories how my life bounced against the cannabis plant and the ignorance that surrounds it. And I did that, I hope, with a series of stories that is informative. I really think this book is as much of a read. It's a textbook. It's a history textbook of cannabis, not just who did what and how the hell it happened anyway, but what happened along the way. Just as a part of the book. Folks probably don't know that Israel has been the leader in cannabis education for 50 years. And that the money that was provided Israel to do this research, mainly at the University of Jerusalem, has come from the U.S., for instance. And recognizing that when we were running our conferences out of patients at a time, we had a lot of Jewish researchers that work for Dr. Meshulam, Professor Meshulam, come and present their studies. So one study comes up, Ms. Kogan, now passed, beautiful, wonderful woman, presents her program and says, we have discovered that if female breast milk, mammals, humans, don't have an endocannabinoid compound in the milk, that the infant won't suckle. Well, think about that. So you got to have this endocannabinoid compound. Well, how do you get that compound? Well, that led along to people saying, well, where's this compound coming from? And that came along to the endocannabinoid system, that came along to what we now know today is that endocannabinoid system that produces all those cannabinoids that are in mother's milk and allow your infant to suckle and be healthy come from our own self-generated system, endocannabinoid. So that there's stories in there like that, page after page after page, that try to influence. I mean, if I was an American mother and I just heard or read what I just said about what was in my breast milk, taking care of my kids, I'd light up. I go, what's he talking about? But that presentation was made 15, 16, 18 years ago. And we still don't know about it, right? I mean,
Right.
we don't. So I wrote this book, and it's full of details like that about how in 1974, money of the United States government paid for studies at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond to see what cannabis would do to lung cancer. And what they found out, 1974, was that cannabis kills cancer cells in the lung, kills them. And so what happened to that study? Well, it just went away.
Just disappeared.
But it hasn't gone away in my book.
Right.
And that's what I'm just trying to get back to is the book. The book is 360 pages long, and there's about 2 pages of it that I flatter myself. I do. I pat myself on the back and say, hey, I freaking did this. Hey, it's part of being the author. You can do that. But the issue is education. It's been ever since I got out of the Navy in 1985, I'm not an educator. I was a soldier. I was a logistician. But I became an educator by default, and I still think that way. And that's what the book is. It's an attempt at not only continuing education that I've been having for decades, but to introduce people in a sort of relaxed way, in a non-medical way, about how valuable medically that cannabis is to them, their sister, their mother, their kid, their dog. That's why I did it. Took me 30 years to learn all that stuff. I put together some notes, of course, along the way, and I did some research. It took me about 18 months of actually sitting down and writing, which is really hard. I've written hundreds of short essays and things, newspaper articles, stuff like that. But a book's another program. But I'm glad I did it. I hope it's valuable, and I obviously just by the title tuned in to veterans.
We just had a comment about some of the stuff we had a comment about some of the stuff you were talking about. Nigel in the audience said, Al, the reason is cannabis heals and they don't want healers.
The reason what?
The reason that all this is going on is they know cannabis heals and they don't want anybody being healed.
Well, yeah, I'm a cynic. I'm not that cynical. I think that the reason that a lot of the problems we still face about getting cannabis into the medical community in a big way is ignorance. That's why, Nigel, that I chose education to try and foster a dialogue that would include real science and especially include healing. You'll find in my book that I introduce you to any number of patients. I'm a patient. Peggy's a patient. Yeah. So I'm introducing you to any number of patients, federal patients, in other words, people that have received their medicine for decades from a government that says it's not a medicine, for instance, or other people that, have to buy theirs on the street. But these are patients, real people who have been helped, by cannabis. I tell their stories. And I'll tell you right off the get-go, of the people mentioned in this book, 95% of the names are accurate. A lot of the people certainly that I have addressed positively for their contributions are deadly accurate. And I've tried to identify with equal accuracy the assholes that I encountered along the way. People that you might think from the outside were helpful to this whole effort, and me think they were really pretty detrimental. And I tell you why in the book. So a lot of, quote, stoners probably, don't like my approach. I'm destroying a few of their idols. That's okay. But I'm also supporting some of their other idols who should be. So it's a back and forth, but it's the best I could do, Peggy, Mike, Nigel, who's ever out there. This thing covers from 1967 to last year. That's a long time. And I did the best I could. And my son said, he read it and he looked at me and he said, Dad, you know what? You got another problem. I said, what? You got to write another book. I said, how's that? And he says, you got to title it What I Left Out. And he's pretty much on that. I left a lot out, but I told as many stories as I can to try and make my point that cannabis is a legitimate medicine and that cannabis is a plant. It's not a drug. It's a plant. And we go over that in the book. It's a plant. So it's not going to run, pull itself out of the ground and run up and grab you and turn you mad or whatever the stories the government. It's a plant. And we tried to demonstrate that. And again, emphasize on veteran interface.
Now, you mentioned in the book, and you brought up that about the federal patients. I was unaware about there actually being federal patients until I read your book and joined the Veterans Action Council. How long has the government actually had cannabis patients?
The program was started by the federal government with a lawsuit was filed by Robert Randall, who became patient number one. He had found that cannabis helped him with his glaucoma. Long story, went to court, and the judge said that he should get medical cannabis. There was a lot of discussion. It's too much legal stuff. You don't need to know. But the end result was that they created the Individual New Drug Program, IND they call it. And Bob was the first cannabis patient that was included in that. And what that means is that Bob got pre-rolled cannabis joints, if you will, cigarettes, sent to him regularly by the federal government for free. Now, that program was increased. The next guy that got on was Irv Rosenfeld. So let's see, you're asking for time frames here. Geez. We're way back. We're at least 90, something like that. 90, I'm sorry, I can't pull that one out, but it's way back there. And Irv still gets it from the federal government 30 years later. He has smoked something like, by now, 150,000 pre-rolled federal cannabis joints. Bob got his cannabis for glaucoma. One of the other federal patients, Elvie Masika, also for glaucoma. Corinne Millette received her cannabis for glaucoma and arthritis pain. George McMahon, another federal patient, got his from nail patella syndrome, which is an excruciating, painful way to die. Irv, he got his for, I can't even pronounce what he is, but basically his body produces tumors on the end of his long bones. They're benign, but they're there. And he's got like 200 of them. If you can imagine the pain of having tumors on the end of your long bones, your elbows, your legs. So yeah, Barbara was an MS patient. Barbara Douglas, now passed. She lived in Iowa. I told the story. It was a story. So Barbara gets on the list to get federal cannabis. I think she was number 7 or 8, something like that. She lived in Storm Lake, Iowa. Her family had some money. She had a beautiful house right on the lake. Its own little pier. Nice neighborhood, beautiful. And I had never met Barbara, but she got this thing, and we were traveling. We stopped to see Barbara. And she was pretty much incapacitated. She had just started getting the federal cannabis, say, a month or 2 before. She was pretty much wheelchair bound and weak and not really, and she had multiple sclerosis. You wouldn't feel really good. And Barbara was very pretty, a mother, and hilarious. Just had a terrific sense of humor. So anyway, we visited for a weekend and we left Barbara. Almost a year later, 11 months later, went back. She met us at the front door, said, wait a minute, I want to go take you guys for a ride. Now, multiple sclerosis also affects eyesight. She got into a pretty big size RV parked in the yard, drove us down the road for a few miles, turned it around, drove it back, parked it, and said, let's go in the house. So 2 days later, after being with her for 2 days, and it was time for us to hit the road, we hit the road in the morning. But she said, listen, I want to give you one more goodbye look. Okay, what? So she got out the back on her dock and she took off on a jet ski a year later, smoking what I would describe the cannabis that she was given was nothing but terrible quality, swag. If your dealer tried to give you that stuff, you'd laugh at him. You'd go, what? You want me to smoke that shit? Not only was it shit, it was full of sticks and seeds. It's awful stuff. And it's still that way, by the way. There's a court case about it. I write it in the book. But even though the government knows that their stuff was swagged and proved in a DEA conference room, a criminal courtroom, it was swag, they still give a real swag. But yes, there's been a whole program, IND, individual new drug. Now, the thing that shut that program down to future patients, we don't know. We think there were probably as many as 35 people enrolled at a given time. Many of them died, I think, off rather quickly because a lot of them were HIV/AIDS patients and were getting it too late. But it ended up that there were only 5 legal patients, and those are the people that joined with me to form this organization in the book about education patients at a time. The thing that shut down this program, now this is as bizarre as this whole goddamn thing has ever been, but the thing that shut down the IMD program for cannabis was homophobia. Dennis Perone and others in San Francisco had recognized that this was very good for, or could be helpful for HIV/AIDS patients, and there was a problem big time in these days with this. And so a lot of these patients were applying to get on the program. And this is, I'm going to misquote this guy, and I can't remember his real name, but he was a doctor. He was a friggin' medical doctor in charge of this program. And he announced that his name was like McDonald or something, but he announced that the program was closed down because there were so many lesbian and men that were using this stuff, and that they were afraid that if they gave this medicine to these people, they would be having sex in the streets.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not making this shit up. I didn't put that in my book. This is another story. This is what my son said you left out. But if
was that just from a bunch of bullshit PR that the government had done?
Huh?
I said, was that because the government had put out a bunch of PR that wasn't true? Or what was it? I mean, it was causing people to believe that craziness.
It's a medical doctor in charge of the program. I can't answer that question. To me, the whole issue, that whole concept is so bizarre. I don't even know how to begin with it. That's moronic.
Yeah.
But it's in the newspaper. You find a New York Times or something, it'll be there. And so they closed it down. Now they did grandfather, if you will, those existing patients. At the time, I think they were like 15 or 17, and then it went to 5, and now it's 1.
That is crazy. I'm surprised that they leave seeds in there, because anytime we've missed a seed, I've noticed it causes migraines and other issues. When you put seeds in the product, I'm surprised that they did that to patients.
I've never found that the lawyers and cops that decide medical protocols for all of us had a scintilla of knowledge about which they talk. Do they care about patients? I don't think so. Why should they? They're law enforcement. Their job's not to care about patients. Their job is to enforce the law. And the rest of them, the lawyers, they don't know shit about anything. All they know is they got out of law school and they can, put on a coat and tie, and win or lose, they get paid. But they don't know anything about medicine. And that's what I write in my book a couple of different times, just to hopefully make the point. If you're living in a state, any state in the United States or one of its territories, there's a list, unless you're in Massachusetts, there's a list of things that a doctor or a nurse practitioner, et cetera, can recommend, or that you use it, the cannabis for medically. And that list was not made by the medical profession. It was made by lawyers. I mean, How ridiculous is that? But that's who makes the list. And as veterans now, with Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, which I co-founded with Mike Kravitz back in 2007, our mission over the last few years has been basically to add veteran issues to the list: pain, post-traumatic stress, phantom pain, things that these lawyers don't even know what the hell you say to a lawyer, phantom pain, he looks at you like, what are you talking about? You said, phantom pain. He goes, I don't know what you mean, man. What's phantom pain? But they're making the list up. And it didn't include phantom pain because they don't even know what the hell it is. So your state is bizarre. The medical community has, I put it this way. The medical community, actually, I find quite professional. They've gone to college. They've gone to medical school or nursing school or pharmacy school. I mean, that's a long time, a lot of money invested, 4 years, working really, really hard. Then they pop out of medical school. It's not over yet. Now they got to do residency, more or long hours. We're talking, these people have dedicated the first 30 years of their life to getting to where the hell they can get out and even think of themselves as a doctor, let alone actually start to learn to be one. And they're not consulted, and they're not trained, and they're not educated about cannabis. That's one reason I started Patients at a Time. That was back in '95, and I realized at the time that by talking to those few MDs and RNs that did know about what medical cannabis, that the rest of them didn't. And I mean the rest of them, 99.9%. And we had to do something about that. So what we did was we formed an organization, again, to educate doctors, nurses, and the general public in the United States about the therapeutic uses of cannabis, called Patients at a Time. And this was accredited education. You know, there had been people up on stages talking the talk, but it wasn't accredited. Accredited means that the American Medical Association, the American Nurses Association had accredited the conferences, the speakers, and the content, that it was scientifically accurate and it could be used to generate what doctors and nurses need every year as education credits, continuing education credits. So this was the first time that anybody had ever tried to do that. And think about what I just said. The AMA, American Medical Association, and the American Nurses Association had to say that this information being presented was accurate, good, scientifically proved research. We presented that first conference 23 years ago. Now, the American Nurses Association has twice in their public disclosures indicated to the world that they have required, they haven't asked, they have required every registered nurse in the United States to be familiar with therapeutic cannabis protocols. They've done it twice. Doctors have not. But again, I repeat, it was 23 years ago, the AMA gave me permission to give out continuing education credits to MDs who sat there in the audience and listened to what we told them. So there's I don't know what the hell the problem is, but I go back to the problem is not enough education in the nursing medical community, and decisions that should be made by the medical community are made by law enforcement and attorneys, and that's illogical. But it's what it is. It's the system of cannabis management in this country. Totally illogical. And let me just go on this one. I know you guys will. You ready, Peggy? You ready, Mike? Treatment by geography. Now, if there is a stupider, immoral, illogical medical policy in the world, I'd like somebody to call me up and identify it. What's Al talking about? If you're a veteran and you want to go to medical treatment in the state of Maine and you use cannabis either legally or illegally in that state, and you walk into the VA there, the Veterans Health Administration's facility, wherever you are, and you say, I need some help. And they say, fine, you're a vet, we're going to help you. And they ask you questions. They say, do you use cannabis? Yeah, I use cannabis. Okay, they write that down. And then they help you. That's it. Okay, so now we got to go someplace that is in the United States. I don't know. Shall we just really pick on? You guys want to pick on one? How about Wisconsin?
Sure.
All right.
You like Wisconsin? I like Wisconsin.
I like Wisconsin.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you gotta run into some real. Anyway, so you go. I'm a vet now. I live in Wisconsin now. One of Peggy and I and Mike's buddies. We won't mention his name, but one of my buddies lives in Wisconsin. So he uses cannabis. He's injured. He was injured he's a Marine. He was injured in combat. He lost part of, he's missing a leg. Is that enough for everybody to get interested? And so he uses cannabis when he goes to California to visit his son, where California has legal cannabis, and his son gets it for him. And when he visits, he stays with his son and he smokes cannabis, and he feels better.
Hi.
He doesn't drink alcohol, which is huge for him. And then he goes back to Minnesota, to Wisconsin, and he can't get cannabis legally, so he drinks alcohol. And we say to him, "Hey, dude, don't do that. Use cannabis. It's illegal, Al," he says. I said, "Well, who gives a shit? It's good for you. Use it." We all say that. Peggy says it. Mike, we all say it to him. He says, "Look, this may sound stupid to you guys, but we do understand him." No, it doesn't sound stupid. But he said, "Look, it's illegal. And I'm a citizen of this state, and I'm not going to break the damn law." And we're like, ooh. But we respect that. But what I don't respect in Wisconsin is the legislators who will not allow cannabis to be in their state. And let's go back to medical treatment by geography. So that means this veteran can't, even if he's using it, which this guy won't, but others do, goes into a VHA facility in Wisconsin to say, "I use cannabis." Remember what happened in Maine? They wrote down the information and treated the vet. You know what happens in Wisconsin? They send him home. They deny him treatment, her treatment. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the book to bring that point out. But if anybody listening to this thing thinks that a veteran should get medical treatment just because of where they live, you and I are going to have a real disagreement for a long time. I find that, as I've said before, illogical. I find it immoral, and it certainly is medically unethical.
Yep.
Read my book. All kinds of stories like this.
Love the book, Al. Love it. I mean, and I honestly, I understand the ignorance. I'm facing the ignorance you talk about with my own family, Al. My own family says, "But dope is dope. Stay away from dope. It'll make you stupid." And I'm like, what?
Fry your reins.
Have you been listening to? Because my father, he died of cancer, a cancer that I found the evidence that Spain found that the cannabis would cure his cancer. He still refused to use cannabis, Al, because it was illegal in our state. He still refused to use the cannabis, and it killed him.
Yeah.
But it saved my life. It got me off of 20 different prescription medications. It saved my life, and I feel better than I have in years. And your book gives me even more evidence and more confirmation that I made the right choice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you did the right thing, and it's been heartwarming to me. I have had people walk up to me I don't even know and say, "You saved my life."
Aww.
Who the hell are you? He said, "No, well, you started way back when I saved my life," and that's good.
That's really good.
Yeah, that's a good feeling. But the book isn't going to do anybody any good unless you read the damn thing and then.
Well, where do you get it at?
And I wish some rich guy'd come along and buy a couple of hundred of them and send them to Congress or something, because the group that Peggy and I and Mike belong to, the Veterans Action Council, we've tried to influence these people, and they're very respectful to us as veterans, and they listen, but it gets lost in the babble of that place and the politics of it, and you almost got to start all over again. I guess that's why corporations have professional lobbyists that just stay there day to day. We can't do that. No. But what I saw over the decades is that more than any other instrument of change was word of mouth. People just say, somebody say, "Oh, cannabis is bad for you," and 3 people in the room said, "Man, you're nuts. This stuff's all right. What's wrong? Where'd you get that shit from?" Again, it's a memoir. It's a story that there's a lot of time I spent in the book writing about cannabis on active duty. Now, again, my active duty years was 61 through 85. But the real 5 years I write about was after Ronald Reagan became president, and that would be 80, 81, whatever it was, to 85. And that turned the military upside down with, just say no and drug tests and piss tests. And some of that still goes on. A story. So where I'm at a naval air station in Whidbey Island, Washington, about as far in the northwest as you can get in our country, or continental United States anyway. And we get the word that everybody's got to take a piss test. Well, my job at the time was a Navy exchange officer. I had 385 employees, but they were all civilians. I had no military working for me. I was the boss. I was from the military, but everybody. And they were excused. And that was fine with me because my employees were working. I was happy with them. They liked their job. Everything was fine. I got no reason to pester anybody. But the Navy thought different. It piss test everybody, or Reagan did anyway. And to me, that was sort of the second whammy. The first whammy to me was the all-volunteer force. We have it now, and I still don't like it. Couple of reasons, but I'll just say them because there'll be people out there that won't understand what I'm talking about. But when I joined the military, I was a volunteer. I joined the military. There was also this thing called the draft, Vietnam War, et cetera, et cetera. We have a draft. And that draft was reasonably fair. It wasn't perfect, but it was reasonably fair. And what happened is it drew people from all walks of life, from all parts of the country, from all social status, and melded them together, and they made an army and a navy, et cetera. And it was a good thing. Because it brought people into contact with people they never would have met in their damn lives. And what they found out was, these are pretty good Joes. That's a nice girl. So there was that harmony that I enjoyed as an officer, seeing that kind of companionship and camaraderie growing. It was wonderful. And I felt good about that. And then all of a sudden, I'm in an all-volunteer force. Well, I'm a wordsmith. There's another name for all-volunteer force, mercenary. And I didn't like that connotation. I still don't. And the public can think of it as an all-volunteer force, and the press can do what the hell they want. When you join a military, whether it's the U.S. or the French Foreign Legion, for a job, you're a mercenary. And those people, I'm not calling them non-patriots. Don't get me wrong. But I want all of my citizens to understand that along with the all-volunteer force, they have a responsibility to the country too. If you elect me president tomorrow, the first thing I'm going to ask Congress to do is make every U.S. citizen at a certain age, 20 years old, whatever, out of college, out of high school, every U.S. citizen works for 2 years for the U.S. government. Does something. You don't have to go in the military. You can go work in a hospital. You can go cut down trees somewhere, work for the Forest Service. I don't care what you do. You get paid, you get medical benefits, you work with other people you'll never see before, and if that includes you want to be in the Coast Guard, that's fine too. But so anyway, we're kind of off the track. But the vets, the people on active duty military in 1980 fell into that trap, and one of the justifications they used, think about this, was that they'd taken a survey or something, but 50% of the U.S. Marine Corps had used cannabis within the previous 30 days. 50%.
Percentage.
Hey, you know what? I asked the question. So what happened? What was the bad? What went bad? Now you know all those guys were on cannabis. What happened? Well, nothing. Nothing happened. See, and here's another bit of history, not in the book, but it really was there back when I was working for NORML, 1990 or so, in Alaska. There was a law passed that legalized cannabis. Legalized it. You could go to your local bar room, have a beer, and smoke a joint, and it was perfectly legal. That went on for 20 years. And you know what? Nothing happened. No bad stuff happened. The law was changed when the pipeline got built. And people came into Alaska from New Jersey and Georgia, or wherever the hell they came from. The law was put up and it was turned down because the people from New Jersey and Georgia didn't pay any attention to the people who've been using it for 20 years and found that using cannabis legally in a state of the United States for 20 years where nothing happened was a good thing. So again, we're back to whether it's medical treatment by geography or making up laws, medical protocols by cops, or any of these illogical situations. This is where we live and what is going down. And again, I go back to the book. All I'm trying to do is educate, educate, educate. I hope the right person reads that book and says, this guy's got a point. That's all I'm trying to say. I got a point. And I think my point is defensible, scientifically substantiated, and should predominate. Just so that people out there understand something. Here's another one. Here's the politician. Some guy will say this tomorrow. We don't have enough research. Well, here's my answer. Bullshit. Bullshit. Look, cannabis is the most studied plant in the world. The American Herbal Association in 2014 declared it an herb, and then they put out a monologue. They wrote a monologue about this stuff. Well, this monologue on this plant and its uses and how to grow it is the second largest monologue ever produced on a plant, second only to garlic, which is another good plant. It's a plant. So my thing is someday it's going to be controlled by the Department of Agriculture, which is where it really belongs. But in the meantime, we have to deal with these illogical situations, these illogical laws made by people without information. Again, that's what my book tries to say. There's a lot of people out there that know a lot about cannabis. And let's look at the world. Again, back to it's not studied or something. All right. There's a world out there, and it's been studied in the world. And in fact, there's 40 countries, give or take one or two, there's 40 countries in the world that have cannabis in their medical pharmacopoeia for their national state, right? The pharmacopoeia is the drugs that are used by their medical people in that country, pharmacopoeia of the country. 40 of them have cannabis in there. Backward places, really, way back places like Spain and Canada. And we don't, because it hasn't been studied. So here's a word for you, hubris, Hubris. Look it up. It means intellectual ego out of control. It's basically what it is. And this country believes that if the research and the science and the experience and the data is not U.S. controlled, made, written, it's useless. Oh.
Do you think, Al, that it's a lot to do with money too? And that they are, like some places are taxing growers to sell in dispensaries. And even like the tobacco places were buying out dispensaries to, grow the cannabis themselves. Do you think it has to do with the big game of who can control it and have the big bucks instead of just having people grow their own cannabis and be self-sufficient. That's not giving the government any kind of income on taxing or anything.
No, I don't think that's an issue.
Okay.
Personally, I believe that everybody should be able to grow their own. If they can grow their plants in their backyard or in a 5-gallon pot on the balcony of an apartment, it's all right with me. I also want for patients high-grade, laboratory tested, incredibly clean cannabis used as a medicine. And I'd like to see grades somewhere in between that for the recreational smoker, etc. So what I'm looking for is freedom to use a plant. As far as, I hear a lot about, it's all big pharma. No, it's not. Again, 40 countries in the world. Merck, I think we've all heard of Merck. That's the fourth largest pharmaceutical company in the world. It's German in origin. They distribute the cannabis to these 40 countries. So these guys, these pharmaceutical companies, they're into this. They're not adversaries. They see there's money to be made, and they're going to make it. On the taxation thing, I don't even want to get into that.
Okay.
But again, you got all these different states with all these different laws and all these different lawyers and cops making up all these different laws that don't make any sense. And they still look at. Granny, I think the big problem is when you start dealing with that kind of conversation, you're going to have a conversation. You're going to have a conversation about a plant and a medicine, and they're going to have a conversation about a drug. And until that meeting can come and they understand what they're really talking about. I mean, we know cannabis can be used as a drug, can be made into a drug. Good, I want that. But it's a plant. But they don't see the plant. They don't see the nutritional value of the plant. And we haven't talked about that. Everybody talks about cannabis and they think about getting high, the medical variety of killing cancer cells, and that's all wonderful. But this stuff is good food. It's incredibly good food. And when eaten and not heated before it's eaten, there is no hallucinogenic effects or psychotropic stuff going on. It's just great food, very nutritious, and containing, especially the seeds, contain all the necessary nutrients of life just in that little package. And this is not unknown. You go to a movie theater in the United States, they'll give you some shit they call popcorn, and it's covered with salt and butter and stuff. You go to a movie theater in China, they give you roasted hemp seeds.
Sounds yummy.
Yeah.
We put hemp seeds in our rice and dal. It adds a lot of nutrients that just blow the mind. It's one of the most nutrition.
Yeah, well, if somebody really wants to get into it, I got involved with producing a book in '97, Cannabis and Medical Practice. And it has 17 chapters, I think it is. One of the chapters was written by Don Wirtschafter. He's an attorney, but he's a friend of mine, and he knows what he's talking about. But Don paid for an extensive study analyzing the hemp seed. And it's printed in this book. It's very much detailed. And essentially it is just what I just said, that the hemp seed contains everything you need to have in your life to keep you healthy. And of course, there's was it Buddha? Yeah, it was Buddha, right?
Yeah.
He sits underneath the tree for a month or so, and all he eats is hemp seeds. Hey,
it depends on which thing you read. There's one thing that says hemp seed. There's one thing that says a grain of rice a day.
Well, I'll go with the hemp seed.
Right.
Well, now what exactly is there? Because I'm a novice, I'm still learning. What is the difference between a growing seed that you plant and a hemp seed? Is there any difference?
Nothing. No.
Oh, so the seeds that I have, you can just eat them?
If you'd like. They're kind of hard. I'd work on them a little bit, pulverize them down. I mean, that it's the plant itself has the same nutrients as the seed, I guess is what I should say. So what a lot of people are doing now, very intelligent, forward-thinking people, is they're taking the green leaves of the growing plant. They strip them off the plant. They taste terrible, by the way. You want to just munch on them. But put them in a blender with a banana and some stuff, whatever you like. Blend it up. Have a smoothie, and it's terrific for you. The doctor that figured this out about 10 years ago, I had him speak at our conference. His wife, who I know, beautiful woman. I mean, model, just beautiful. Couple of kids, just great. Got sick, super sick, going and falling apart. Husband's an MD, went all everybody, nothing happened. And for whatever reason, he decided that he was going to give these leaves to his wife. And he did. And she's back to being gorgeous and beautiful and a healthy mom again. And that's the guy that introduced us to the idea that you can eat these leaves, and again, no psychotropic thing. Nothing goes to your brain. The only psychotropic action you ever get from cannabis is if you heat it. That's why you smoke it in a bowl or a joint or wherever you smoke it, and that releases that particular compound stuff.
Okay.
Now, one of our viewers asked a question. They asked about the cannabis and HIV. They never heard about using cannabis for HIV. You brought up HIV and cannabis patients.
Well, it helps with all the obvious things. First of all, as I've said, cannabis kills cancer cells. Okay, I mean, right off the get-go. And it does it 4 different ways. See if I can remember them all, but one of them is it reduces the blood supply to the cancer cell. These all have medical terms. One is one is called apoptosis, which is a strange medical term, but basically the cannabis compounds that fight off these cancer cells convince this cell that it should commit suicide, and it does, essentially. Another one of the attributes is it shuts off any metastatic growth. It keeps the cancer cells localized to wherever the hell they are, and they don't get to migrate to other parts of the body, other organs, et cetera, et cetera. And so as I point out in my book, we have this endocannabinoid system, and we now understand that its major function is to fight cancer. It does a lot of other good things very well, but its major function is to fight cancer. And it sort of makes sense to me. Cancer's been with the human body and horses and elephants ever. And it just makes sense that in the evolutionary process, all of our bodies would develop something to fight this particular intrusive enemy. And again, let me point out, this endocannabinoid system I keep referencing is existent in every creature on Earth except insects. Everything. Snakes, birds, reptiles, humans, dogs, everything. And so everything has developed a system to fight cancer, and it does it really well. Now, then we go into, well, what about these people who have cancer? What's wrong? Well, they're not smoking cannabis or using cannabis correctly, or as Ethan Russo, Dr. Russo says, they have an endocannabinoid deficiency. In other words, their endocannabinoid system, for whatever reason, isn't operating at 100%. Maybe it's running at 80%. For whatever reason, it's not doing well. Well, if it's running at 80%, so is your pulmonary system, so is your immune system, so is your nervous system, because the endocannabinoid system is the mother. Everything is dependent on that system operating. So that's when Ethan says, all right, you got an endocannabinoid deficiency here going, patient. Start taking in cannabis. So you eat it, you smoke it, you take it in, you build up your endocannabinoid deficiency by adjunct medicine, if you will. You're taking in the plant from the outside, giving it to your body to strengthen that system, which in turn strengthens your immune system and the other systems, etc. And that's the whole concept of the cannabis plant, is to keep that endocannabinoid system operating so that everything else operates well.
You're muted, Grady.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering why you couldn't hear me. I was like saying, wow, that's amazing. Because, well, now I got to figure out how do you go about getting the plant to eat or the leaves.
I don't mind saying so, because I live in a very enlightened county in Florida where the sheriff here has publicly told everybody, if you're an adult and you want to use cannabis in my county, as long as you do it responsibly, it's fine with me. And, he has a couple of caveats. I don't want to see that shit anywhere near a kid. I don't want to see it anywhere near my school. But if you want to sit there in your living room and smoke a doobie, I could care less. But what he does care about, and I second the guy all the way, is he's dead set against methamphetamine and all these other hard drugs like fentanyl. That's where he concentrates his time. So I grow my own in Florida. And I've grown my own for 35 years, even under governments who, looking at me. I got pretty good at hiding it. But so that's where I get mine. I grow my own, and I tell you honestly, Granny, I don't eat it as much as I use it as a smoke, as get it into my blood system in that manner. And one reason I'll bring this up, I think parents ought to know, or everybody ought to know, that worries about smoke. It's in the book, but let me just tell you. Years ago, when we had our first conference, University of Iowa Medical School and Nursing School sponsored us. It's 2000, it was 23 years ago. I invited Dr. Donald Tashkin to speak, professor of medicine at UCLA, also head of the Department of Pulmonary Science at UCLA. And he'd been hired by the United States government prior to 2000 to do a long-term study on cannabis and cannabis smoke in the lungs.
Right.
And of course, the government was convinced that it would be bad news.
Still is.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Tashkin came in 2000, and he had 7 more years to go. I think the study was 30 years long, if I'm not mistaken. But he had 10 or 12,000 patients who made it all the way. Anyway, he came in 2000. He said, I don't know. I don't think the government's going to be happy with what I'm going to say when this is over. So he came back again in 2008. It was over. And he said, here's what he said, that he divided up his patients over these 30 years into 4 separate categories. Patients that smoked cannabis and cigars, tobacco. Patients that smoked tobacco and cannabis at the same time. Patients that smoked only cannabis, and patients that smoked nothing. If you smoke cannabis and tobacco, you're going to come down with COPD and lung cancer just like they say you would. He's no doubt about it in his mind. That's what's going to happen to you. If you smoke only cannabis, he said, that he had his 3,000, 2,500 cannabis smoking patients, not one of them had lung cancer. Not one. Not one had COPD. Now, that was a better result than people that smoked nothing at all. Now, that was 2008. So the difference here is there's tobacco smoke and there's cannabis smoke, and it's not the same thing. just to drill this home,
Mm-hmm.
just this past May 2023, 6 months ago, the journal called COPD, pulmonary disease, redid that study of Tashkin, also done by UCLA. This one was only 7 years. And they did the same thing all over again. The only difference was they actually included people in the study who had COPD, emphysema, something. And so they did the thing. And those people smoked cannabis only. And when the 7 years was over, they didn't have any cancer, zero cancer. And all the people that went in to the study with COPD came out without it. It actually cured the disease.
Well, so, that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, well, there you go. And again, this is high quality UCLA research over 40 years, and it's conclusive. And so that's why I smoke it, because it's efficient. I can titrate what I need for my pain. I use it mainly for pain. Mm-hmm. And I can titrate it. And when I've had enough, I've had enough. If it starts to hurt again, I can go take another hit. And I can really manage my dose, which is what I want to do.
Right.
Peggy will tell you, I'm not a fan of eating it. I don't like edibles. Now, given that, I have counseled my daughter, who's 55, to eat an edible every night, as she has been, and her sleep has been wonderful. That's what she needed. She didn't need to sleep in the edibles. But she has learned to get a certain edible, a certain dose, if you will. She takes a certain number of half an hour before whatever bedtime is and goes to bed. And she sleeps until she gets up and goes to work. But what we hear all the time is, there's all these emergency room admissions and all these people are overdosing. And yeah, because they're as idiots as the cops and the lawyers. They eat an edible and they somehow think it's the same thing as Al taking a hit on a doobie. No, when I take a drag on, and I don't use it, I use a pipe. I'll tell you about that later. But when I take a hit on a pipe, again, I know within a matter of, say, 30 seconds max how that all went down. If I eat one of these gummies, I can sit there for 45 minutes and nothing happens. So if you're a novice, you take one of these gummies and you wait around for half an hour and you say, oh, this is bullshit. So then you take another one. All right. 15 minutes, the first one kicks in. Half an hour later, the second one kicks in, and you're in the emergency room. And saying, I overdosed, and they're telling you overdosed on cannabis. Well, yeah, you did. You're a fool. It's like drinking too much alcohol. You're going to end up with alcohol poisoning. It's not brain science. It's a dose control thing. Mm-hmm. So let me do the how do you take this stuff in thing, because I think people should know this. I'm not making it up. There's a Dr. Mark Ware. He's been with me for years at Patients Out of Time. He's a Canadian physician, brilliant, and works for Health Canada doing cannabis studies. He also plays a mean guitar. Mm-hmm. So Mark did a study for Health Canada about usage and percentages, meaning he took a given dose of raw cannabis flower and put it in a bong and had a machine smoke it. I don't know how he did it, but they smoked it. He took the same stuff, put it in a joint, and smoked it. Put it in a bowl, and smoked it. So here's what happened. If you put your flower in a joint, you're gonna get about 10 or 12% of the value of that bud. If you put it in a bong, which I don't recommend, you're going to get about 40% of the value of that bud. If you use a pipe like I do, you get over 80. So just as a financial discussion, it makes much more sense to use a pipe than a joint or a bong. And a bong is especially bad news because as you inhale through that liquid, whatever it is, when I was cool, we used wine in the bong. And then there was always some idiot that wanted to drink the wine, you know. But, anyway, use a pipe. And then here's what Dr. Taskin told me, because at the time he said, Al, how do you smoke this stuff? I said, I use a pipe, doctor. Oh, good. He says, how often do you clean it? I said, you know, every once in a while. How do you clean it? Alcohol? He says, all right, can we start over, Al? Yeah. What is it, doc? Here's what he said. Get 3 pipes. Use one today. Have one being cleaned as you speak, and have one ready to go tomorrow morning that's sparkling clean already. And rotate those on a daily basis. And he was pretty emphatic about this. And he said, look, there's 2 things going on here. Most people that are cannabis smokers share at some point with somebody. You'll hand your pipe to your buddy. Well, yeah, sure. And he'll hand it to the other guy. Yeah. And then you get it back. Yeah. And he says, well, now you got everybody's bacteria inside that pipe. Everybody's. And you can handle a little of that, but not if you keep at it day after day after day. So clean the pipe. And he also warned about my own bacteria or your own bacteria. He said, you can use your pipe all by yourself someday, but you've left bacteria in that pipe that over a period of 10, 12 hours can morph into something you don't want to inhale in your lungs. Now, this guy, you know, he's the head of the pulmonary department of UCLA. I paid attention. So that's what I do. I rotate 3 pumps, and I have pipes, and I have since Dr. Taskin told me that 23 years ago. And I'll continue to do it. So financially, it's a better deal. And health-wise, according to the expert, it's a better deal.
Wow. Okay. So you clean it with alcohol. You just soak it in alcohol. That's it.
No, I do not.
Oh, okay.
I used to. What I do now is I use a degreaser. Mm-hmm. My particular favorite is Purple Power.
Oh, okay.
You can buy that stuff in like a hardware store or a Tractor Supply or Auto Parts. It's purple. But it's a degreaser. It works. It's biodegradable. So I have a jar and I fill it up with Purple Power and I drop the pipe in. I blow it out, get as much out of it as I can and prep it in. And the next morning, you leave it there about 24 hours. And then the next day I'll put one in, take that one out and rinse it very thoroughly in hot water and it's good to go. It's clean, cleaner than you could ever get with alcohol.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you for the tip.
Yeah,
I'm sure the audience will like that.
I say Purple Power because that's what I use, but I suspect any degreaser would work.
Okay.
Yeah, but the idea is, rinse it well. You got to rinse it well.
Yeah.
But again, and then that jar that I have, I just have a habit. Every weekend I throw that stuff out. Again, it's biodegradable. I just put it out on my lawn, and I start over.
Yeah.
New jug, new pipe, we go again. So pipe every day, a jug every week, and my lungs are in good shape.
Awesome. Oh, I appreciate that tip. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I'm still learning a lot.
Well, again, that's why I wrote my book.
Yeah. Well, now I know I can get it on Amazon.
She didn't know about the legal patients. I mean, to me, that's pretty basic. I've been working with them since 1995. So I knew about them a long time ago. And it's not, I went to my chiropractor a couple of weeks ago and she got the book immediately. And now her receptionist is reading it. And that's just what she said to me. I sat down waiting for my turn and she says, hey, Al, I'm in the page, whatever of your book. I didn't know there were federal patients. Same thing. And this is a mature, well-educated 55-year-old woman.
Mm-hmm.
Has kids and the whole thing, responsible. And she didn't know. And she's not adverse to the cannabis. She's kind of a fan of it, but she still didn't know the background, the history.
No.
And that's why, again, the book has a lot of history to let people today know that this just didn't happen.
Right.
It just didn't occur there was decades of hard work and sacrifice, overcoming stupidity, and we're still at it. It's not that it's over. It's just it's
I love overcoming stupidity.
Well, let's talk about veteran stupidity, if I may.
Yes, that's well, we all have it. So yes.
Well, I should say Veterans Administration stupidity.
Ooh, that's better. Okay, I like that.
I apologize, guys. I mean, that's what
You're okay. There's a lot everywhere. There's enough to go around. No worries, Al.
Yeah. I won't even go Army, Navy, Air Force on that one. So,
sorry, I'm getting a little bit comfortable here.
All right. Years ago now, my co-partner Mike Kravitz and I formed up this Veterans for Cannabis Access thing in 2007. And by 2010, the Veterans Health Administration had, by their own directive, declared cannabis was a medicine, and it should be treated as such by all VHA medical personnel, nurses, everybody, by directive. And they've changed the directive a couple of times, but just words here and there. The content is the same. And given due where due is due, I was there, but Michael did most of the gut work and got them to answer up to us. But anyway, it got done. So, July 2010, 13. So the VAC, I talked to the VAC about this, and I said, you know, what we got to do is we got to find out what happened. And they said, yeah, what happened? You've got, even though we have treatment by geography, and some vets were never able to go near their VA hospital if they use CAVE, there's a lot of states and territories, all the territories that do. So there's a lot of vets, men, women, all ages, all conflicts, have been going to all kinds of places and saying to their doctors and nurses, yes, I use cannabis. Please write that down in my medical protocol. 13 years of that. Tens of thousands of visits, maybe 1 million, I don't know. Big number.
Yeah.
So the VAC said to the VHA, what happened? I mean, it seems like a legitimate question, doesn't it? You got all these patients using cannabis. So what happened? Did the axe murders pick up? Did everybody go crazy? Or did nothing bad happen at all? Because I don't know about you, but it's been 13 years and I haven't heard the VA say anything bad about any vet doing anything with cannabis ever. So we said, so what happened? So that took 6 months, and they wrote me. I was the main guy there. So they wrote me back and they said, well, we just don't understand what you want. Really? So the VAC put together this other letter, very detailed, you know, everything. And so after 6 months, they came back and said, we don't have any data. We don't know what happened. We have no idea as a healthcare facility what happened to tens of thousands of your brothers and sisters who use cannabis. We don't have a clue. Now, if that isn't stupidity on steroids, I don't know what it is. Because here the VA had a chance to have the largest, longest, most detailed cannabis medical study in the history of the world done at no expense. All they have to do is submit the data to a computer. Computer can keep track of this shit. We all know that. But they didn't do that. They said, however, they also have said, is your government working, guys? You ready? They've also said in their directives, and we have their paperwork, it says that these medical practitioners who take in this information about cannabis shall write it down and report it to a specific spot so that they can collect the data. So I'm just out here, just a citizen, see? But I look at it and I say, well, I got to believe that the doctors and nurses that work for the VA do what they're told, that they have reported data to someplace on cannabis, and that the VHA is lying.
Yep.
So I'm Peggy and I just discussed yesterday, actually, I think it was, that with some other guys, that we're going to go out to the VHA a little bit and say, okay, here it is. You've done 13 years of cannabis medicine and you don't know what happened. Maybe you should all resign.
That's really a big lie.
Yeah, at the least, maybe we can make them start to declare. But we have a lot of, we meaning the group, have a lot of questions about their veracity.
Well, and where's this place? Could you go in and ask any practitioner in the VA and say, I would like to declare that I'm using cannabis? Where do we report this? And they will look at you and say, I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, the average VHA physician nurse understands that cannabis is out there now and that veterans are using it all over the place. The question we have is for the administrative people. Once your clinicians, et cetera, have reported, where to go and what to say. And if they didn't report it, why didn't you demand it of them? Because your own directives say it's supposed to happen. And if it happened, why don't you tell us what happened? It's just, Granny, I mean, I can ask you about 15 questions. We don't know the answer, but the VHA is going to try and either get the answer or try and bring it to the national attention that, again, veterans aren't being treated like veterans should be treated. We have unequal treatment, and we have treatment that is not being recorded.
Well, see, my VA actually asks every veteran if they use cannabis. Our VA has a questionnaire that they ask veterans on their cannabis usage. So I know if our VA is asking veterans, there must be other VAs that are also asking veterans. So therefore, that data that the VAC has requested exists somewhere.
I don't know, because I was denied any kind of medical help, which is what I always thought the VA was for. But because if I was using cannabis, I was not allowed to have medications. And I'm not talking pain pills. I'm talking about my mental health. I'm talking about blood pressure. I'm talking about any of the normalized medications that, most people take. And I was told that if I tested positive for marijuana, that I would not be allowed to participate with that VA. Well, it's only one VA.
That's really what we got involved with in 2007. What Mike and I fought was what you're talking about is something the VA called the pain contract. And basically they said that if you're taking cannabis, you can't have other medications.
That's right.
Well, we kind of objected to that. And what it turned out was that this was always quoted to Mike, to me, to you, to thousands of other people, that it was a VHA policy, that this is the way it was. So we said, okay, could you send us a copy of that in writing? And after 3 years, they did tell Mike and I in writing that there was no such policy, that there had never been such a policy, that it was a myth constructed, and they were sorry. And that is when they put out the directive in July of 2010 that said that cannabis is a medicine. And if you read that directive, it will say very clearly that because a patient uses cannabis, they shall not be, denied any kind of pharmaceutical aid. So whenever you were told that, I hope it was before 2007. Otherwise, the people that told you that are absolutely wrong.
No, they told me in 2021.
Yeah, well, they were. It happened to me with I got on the guy the doc that runs the VA clinic here in Tallahassee just a little while ago, a year ago, and same thing. And when I sent him the directives, he was kind enough to call me back the next morning and say, "Mr. Byrne, thank you so much. I was wrong, and we shall never do that again to a vet." They just don't. Again, it's education. They just don't know. So that's the book again, For Country and Cannabis. Just trying to get out all of this kind of, it's all in this book. Almost everything I've talked about tonight is in this book, and a lot more.
Well, I'm going to get a copy for me, and that way I can start, because I'm in Texas now. And so I'm not really quite sure what I'm going to come against, but from what I have been told, it's going to be quite the hard.
Well, I think you'll find the book a good investment. And the only thing I would ask people that buy it, read it, like it, the best thing you can do for your fellow veterans is to go back where you bought it, Amazon Books or Barnes and Noble Books or Thrift Books or wherever you bought this thing. And all of these outfits have a way to do a grade, like 5 stars or 3 stars or whatever the hell it is, and or to write a sentence or two saying what their opinion is. And if you like the book, that's the way to tell other vets, hey, if you're a vet out there, you need to read this thing. If you're even as well read and as knowledgeable as Peggy and Mike are, she admits, I didn't know some of this stuff. And again, that's why I wrote it, because I don't know. I think I could ask 100 women on the street, do you understand if you don't have endocannabinoids in your breast milk and you have a baby, that baby will not suckle? You'll have to give it some sugar-coated shit to make it eat. They'll look at me like I'm nuts. But the way that came about in Israel was they of course they didn't use humans, but they used mammals of some kind, and then basically chemically they removed the endocannabinoids from the mother's breast milk, and the pups just didn't suckle. They just died. They didn't even try to eat.
It was in mice. I read the study you're talking about, Al.
Yeah. So, and again, since this system is in all living creatures except insects, that's pretty important news. But I can't tell you how many veterinarians don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I'm a dog guy, and I give my dogs a small bit of cannabis butter every night when they go to bed. They get dinner, and then they get I can't say the word out loud, but TREAT.
Yeah.
And they line up for it, and they love it. And a couple of things happen. I'm convinced that, and again, this isn't a lot. This is a very small dose. I got big dogs. One's 95, the other's 75. I give them a Triscuit with like a little peanut butter spread kind of thing on it. I give it. Two things happen. They're happy, and they sleep. A half an hour, 45 minutes later. I mean, they're not unconscious, but when they lay down, they sleep. I get them up at 9 o'clock. I go to bed at 9 o'clock. It's probably 9 o'clock now, but I get up and they're with me. Let's go. We're going in the bedroom, and then I go right back to sleep. And I do too. It's a great sleep aid, and I've interviewed on the radio hundreds and hundreds of vets. And I have never had one tell me that it did not help him or her sleep. Hundreds of them have said, I could never sleep more than 2-4 hours. I'm up wandering around. And I tried the cannabis, and man, I did 8 hours straight. It's a wonderful sleep aid. It's really a good plant. It's good for your health. And I hope people will read the book, pick up some knowledge, tell their sister about it, tell their boss about it. So help each other, and again, word of mouth is probably the best way to do that right now.
Awesome.
And sooner or later, the media will stop inviting charlatans to talk about it and invite people that actually know what the hell they're saying.
You haven't done an actual interview with any kind of news agency?
Give me that again, Granny.
You haven't done any kind of interview with a news agency?
No.
Really?
No.
Wow.
I did just get the word though today that if you go to timeforhemp.com, that's an old line informational program that not only included hemp but medical cannabis use and legal issues. And the guy that did the work retired, but he came back to life just recently. He turned the reins of the whole operation over to a new guy, and they have completely restored the archives of Time for Hemp. So from my perspective, there's probably on Time for Hemp at least over 100 interviews that I did with Mike and veterans. And there's going to be at least that many interviews that I did with MD, PhD types when we had a Patients at a Time program on that channel.
Oh, wow.
The thing it's the veteran thing. It's all the same. You can listen to any single veteran thing and then go to another one. They're going to say the same thing. They're in a different war. They're a different sex. It doesn't matter. They said, yeah, cannabis, I had pills, I had this, I had that. My life was a mess. I was mad. My wife hated me. And now everybody, I'm better. Well, that's all out there. And then on the other thing, the archives that included the interviews with all these docs and nurses and PhD types, incredible information.
Wow.
Every one of those programs, every one of those guys and girls we brought on were there because they knew something nobody else did. And
well, you'll have to let us know when they start playing.
Well, you got to go find them. It's timeforhemp.com. And you look into their archive section. They got it's a nice webpage. It's completely redone. Quality act. Timeforhemp.com. There's so much information there from me and others that anybody that's a serious student of this stuff, or anybody that's got a particular medical problem. Let's say you got MS. Well, there's an interview there with an MS expert. Or you got glaucoma. There's an expert there. There's an expert for Crohn's disease. There's somebody with sickle cell. There's somebody there that can tell you all the research that you need to know about why that stuff should help you and how to use it.
I got to look into that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You are just full of nuggets. Golden nuggets.
I tell stories. That's what I do.
Well, I appreciate your time. I know you mentioned that it's getting close to your bedtime. I'm not sure if you're in Florida, so I have no idea what time it is. I'm just figuring out what my time is. So, are you wanting to continue on? We're over a half hour, but it's up to you if you would like to continue talking.
Why don't you invite me back another time?
I will do that. I'll have you on my show.
There you go.
Well, now, hold on, Granny. Before we go, we do need to tell everybody about the Veterans Action Council, which Al and I are both members of. And you should start coming to meetings, Granny, since you're in Texas now. That way we can come and help you get your cannabis rights there in Texas. So if there's any veterans that are watching and they're interested, this Thursday, every other Thursday, we have a buddy check-in. And how long have y'all been doing that, Al?
Yeah, well, that Veterans Action Council library, I guess, is what you call it. We have. You go to the Veterans Action Council, and there's, I don't know what we're up to now, 60 or 70 or something interviews. They're all like an hour or so long, maybe a little longer, like this one. And the information there is amazing.
Okay, cool.
We cover other issues. We go into politics. We go into interstate commerce. There's some non-medical type issues, but a lot of it still relates to the veteran and the veteran problems.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited about learning about this. I know Peggy has been just, saying, we got this going on. We got this going on. When you coming? When you coming? Like, okay, let me get moved. And so I'm moved now. So I really don't have much of an excuse. But I am definitely looking forward to getting into your library and time.com. Is that
Time for hemp.
Hemp.
Time hemp?
And 4 is the number 4. So it's time number 4 hemp.com.
Oh, time number 4 hemp. Got it.
Well, okay. I thank you, ladies, for inviting me in. It was fun. I was always glad to talk about cannabis education and of course plug my book. Hey.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
definitely. How often do you write them? I definitely want to get one. And so I've been noticing that you can order it on Amazon. You could probably get it off of Barnes and Nobles, any kind of, you could probably even get it on, what do you call it? Digital.
Anywhere. Yeah. And it's both hardcover and it's ebook. So
okay. So there you go.
It's there. And I don't know. My daughter bought hers in a local bookstore there outside of Boston. Just a regular.
Oh, wow.
So it's around. It's getting around. I did just for the heck of it check in with one of them. I forgot, Barnes and Noble maybe, but they're out right now, and they have a note that says, "Sorry, but we're getting more real soon."
Oh, that's a good sign.
Yes.
I think a lot of, well, maybe just not just veterans, but I think a lot of people with the medical industry is getting really tired of being told no on having something that's so natural and works with the body. That believe that the cannabis can do these things. There's evidence behind it. Why should it be just for veterans? But I understand we hardly ever have our selves, I don't know, I guess people on our side on trying to do things through our medical field, the VA.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of champions.
Yeah. So I that's encouraging. So thank you so much. I really do. And it's so nice to meet you.
It's been great having you as a guest, Al.
We said hi the other day, but we didn't really get to chat much.
No, we didn't. And actually, I thought you were Mike. I didn't know you were Al.
No, I'm the better looking one.
Oh, I can't wait to join the group. I think I'm going to have some fun. But yes, thank you. I appreciate. I'm sorry I came in late, but I couldn't help it. There's traffic in Texas. Who knows?
Not where I live. That's why I live here.
I was like, holy cow! To go 9 miles, it was over an hour, almost an hour. It was 48 minutes with traffic.
Move.
To go 9 miles.
Move.
I just moved here, but it didn't help that I was doing it probably at the worst time of the day. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Al, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Any last words, Peggy?
Just remember that sharing is caring, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Bye-bye.